What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Taryn Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to talk about in the world of volleyball, such as Wisconsin taking down not one but two top 10 teams as they take down, you guessed it, number 1 Nebraska at home in a rematch of last year's NCAA Women's Volleyball Final in straight sets. And they also took down Minnesota in the Battle of the Border as well. Also, how about Northwestern? Another upset for the Wildcats as they take down Purdue. Goodness me, are the Wildcats for real? They may actually get into the NCAA tournament. They really are the real deal. And how about Illinois? They pulled off the upset against Penn State as well as they took down the Nittany Lions last Wednesday, the same day as Wisconsin took down Nebraska. Also, we've got some NCAA men's volleyball to talk about, and we have the CIF-SS section, Division 1 and Division 2 girls volleyball finals to preview. So hand me a volleyball, set for that, pass out the candy, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on this Halloween episode of Set Point. This is Taryn Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. I hope you all are having a beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made yourself into episode 166 of Set Point. Oh, by the way, happy Halloween to everybody. Here's hoping I don't get any trick-or-treaters because as I'm recording this right now, it is 6 p.m. here in the Pacific Standard Time. And without any further delay, let's get on into it. But before we get on into the volleyball action, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform. IE Sports Radio can be followed on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. You can also follow IE Sports Radio on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com. And when you go to the website, you will see at the top a Patreon link which starts at $5 a month. This will get you a shout from all of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. With your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Thank you to our Patreon supporters who continue to support IE Sports Radio, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Marcus Losgreat, Key to the Gate, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. Now let's get on into the volleyball action. So we're going to start off with some NCAA men's volleyball action. And yes, I understand y'all want to hear NCAA women's volleyball, but the men's season is vastly approaching, ladies and gentlemen, and last Saturday, I had the honor of attending the Long Beach State-Pepperdine men's volleyball scrimmage. So, in this scrimmage, there were two scrimmages. One was up to one had 4 sets, no more, no less. Actually, it was originally 4 sets, and then Alan Knipe and new head coach of Pepperdine, Jonathan Winder, agreed to having 5 sets. And basically, it was just 5 sets, and that was pretty much it. The scrimmage actually started at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then it pretty much ended after that 5th set, regardless of who won the number of sets. Either way, it was a fun little scrimmage. This was actually just the reserves, the second... Oh, okay, I wouldn't say second stringers, but this was just like the younger players and the players that don't really get to see a whole lot of playing time. The second scrimmage featured the starters and the main key guys that normally that have pretty much earned a spot on their respective teams. Now, all of these spots aren't set in stone, but anything can happen from the span of early November all the way to early January. So, in the first scrimmage, basically, Pepperdine unofficial won that one 4-1. They won 4 sets out of the 5. Their players looked really impressive, as Aiden Toon was one player that stood out. Also got to see a former player that I covered back in his high school volleyball days, James Eady. He had a couple kills and some blocks as well, and his float serves were pretty strong as well. I actually talked to Jonathan Winder, as this is his first year as head coach, and he does take over for David Hunt, who basically moved on from Pepperdine. He moved with his wife, Jordan Larson. I think they're now residing in Texas, and Larson is the assistant for Texas, and I think David Hunt is also an assistant. I'm not entirely sure on that. But either way, the two have moved on from Pepperdine, so Jonathan Winder is the new head coach for Pepperdine men's volleyball. And after the first scrimmage, I caught up with Jonathan to discuss how the first scrimmage and basically have some takeaways on the second scrimmage. Keep in mind this was after the first scrimmage, and basically I was just trying to prolong the future, or look into the future, as basically I just want to have his initial takeaways from the second scrimmage, regardless of how many sets his team won. But either way, this is my post-scrimmage, first scrimmage interview with Pepperdine men's volleyball coach Jonathan Winder. All right, this is Taryn Rodriguez of Set Point with Pepperdine men's volleyball coach Jonathan Winder. All right, Coach, your team just wrapped up its first scrimmage as you all played a very talented Long Beach State team. What were some takeaways from today's scrimmage?
I think the big thing for us coming in was just establishing how we want to play. Early on was kind of the first time we battled, and I thought the big takeaway for us right now was just that we got better as the sets went and the match went. We hit it in a little bit more, served it in a little bit more, and the guys battled well and played hard. So it was a good start for us. The guys on the bench that weren't playing were really engaged. So really trying to establish, our brand and the way that we want to play every day.
You being in your first year, what are you looking forward to the most as the head coach for Pepperdine men's volleyball?
I don't know. I'm just glad to be here. I'm excited to be back a part of the Pepperdine program. I think it's a really fun group of guys. They work really hard. They love what they're doing. They have a lot of joy when they play. They're really dedicated, and so it's inspiring and fun for me to be a part of that group.
Who are some standout players we could all keep an eye out for this year?
Yeah, it's good to see everybody play against someone else, and so I thought it was neat this morning. Aiden played really well, too. We had Keaton played really well, Yadi, so it was a really neat opportunity to get a lot of guys that haven't played a ton. Some good time this morning, and then we have a few more guys that didn't play this morning that'll play this afternoon. And so honestly, I think it's really exciting for our group. We've got a lot of players that are battling, and so we're excited to see what comes of them.
And then for the second scrimmage, what are going to be some takeaways from that one, and what are you looking forward to in that scrimmage?
I think pretty similar. We've spent some time on blocking. We've spent some time with serving, and certainly with passing. And I think for us, it's trying to figure out that kind of serve transition phase of the game and what that looks like against a really high-powered offense. And so I think it's more of the same, and hopefully we play the way that we want to play and respond the way that we want to respond, and get into some adversity and kind of just get in the fight a little bit.
Coach, thank you for your time. Good luck this season.
Thank you.
So that was my first scrimmage interview with Jonathan Winder. I should make note that, unfortunately, in the second scrimmage, Pepperdine did not have Bryce Dvorak, as he had a right foot injury. According to Winder, he's hoping, or they're all hoping, that he'll be ready by the time season starts. If I'm not mistaken, Dvorak was the MPSF tournament MVP from last year, because y'all got to remember, Pepperdine won the MPSF tournament as I don't remember who they beat in the first round. I think it was Grand Canyon. Yeah, it was Grand Canyon. They beat Grand Canyon, and then they upset USC, which I thought, I was rather shocked by that. And then they outlasted Stanford in the final. Yes, Stanford, not UCLA, because if you all remember, UCLA lost to Stanford in the semifinals despite having a bye. So for Pepperdine, I think they're going to be a good team to watch for. And they have a lot of good talent on that team. It's not just one player. And I'm blanking on the first name of their top players. I know it's Akin, but I don't want to mispronounce this incorrectly. So it's Akin Akinwumi. He hails from Peninsula High School. He hails from Rancho Palos Verdes. And then I also saw Ryan Barnett do his thing. Jalen Jasper, he's going to be back, which is going to be huge for Pepperdine. And then some other good players that I saw, Aiden Toon. I'm going to be interested to see what Eli Crane does. I think he could prove to be a spark for the Waves offense. Cole Rasick might be another player to watch for. Jacob Steele, who had himself a solid season last year, he did not play as well. I did not get the whereabouts of his injury, but again, once Clark Steele and Bryce Dvorak get onto that court, Pepperdine's going to be I wouldn't say a true contender, but I think they're going to be something to watch for in the MPSF. Just because everyone so much focuses on UCLA and I guess maybe USC, which was the case last year. They kind of forget about Pepperdine and then Stanford. Grand Canyon was pretty decent. BYU had a little bit of a down year, but I think this year might be a little bit better for them. So overall for Pepperdine, I think they're a dark horse to win the MPSF, but that's probably a good thing, just because whenever you're in the spotlight, you get so much pressure when you're in the spotlight, and everyone plants so many expectations on you. I mean, you'll just look at UCLA. They have lots of expectations year in and year out with their coaching staff and the amount of talent they bring in, and basically it just can get so much pressurizing that it could topple all over you. And when you're the underdog, you don't have much to lose. So on the other side of things, Long Beach State wound up winning the second scrimmage, because this one actually was played to 4 sets. It was actually supposed to be 2 hours, no more, no less, just because of time constraints due to the women's volleyball match between Long Beach State and Cal Poly. So in this one, we got to see Long Beach State's players in terms of its starters, like Dane Hillis. Well, Dane Hillis actually did not start last year. He actually, we got to see him a couple times, or I got to see him a couple times in terms of serving, but this time I got to see him hit the ball. Spencer Olivier is obviously one of their top returners. Aiden Knipe is their starting setter, and they have a lot of other talented players on the team. They did actually get a transfer. Grant Maroki returns at middle, as well as Mark Moody. I thought Mark Moody was going to be done, but I guess he took his extra year due to the COVID year. But they did get a transfer from Ohio State. This dude was really good, and he served really well. It kind of reminded me of Joey Jarvis of the Orange County Stunners, but this player that Long Beach State had, who is a transfer from Ohio State, this dude was straight up legit, as his name was, I'm going to butcher this probably, Sotiris Siapanis. He was good, and you know how Long Beach State has like chants on the bench or cheers on the bench? I forget the entire. Now I remember the cheer when Sotiris was serving. The players on the bench were basically chanting "Ooh la la, he's the king of the castle," or something along those lines. And that's what I like about Long Beach State. They always have like certain cheers for like certain players. You have to see the men's volleyball matches at Long Beach State in order to get a full understanding of what I'm talking about. So anyway, for Long Beach State, they looked really darn good. And it wasn't just one player, like I said. They all looked pretty darn good, if you ask me. And I really think that this team has a lot of potential this year. And I think one of their players, Shane Holdaway, was out, but they're so deep. They have like lots of good players. And also, I saw Clark Godbold. I'm going to have to it's going to take me a while to relearn some of the names. And also, Mason Briggs at libero was good as well. So, for Long Beach State, it was basically business as usual, but this is just a scrimmage. If anyone is making a huge deal of this, then you are not really the smartest person that I know of. So, not really, but scrimmages, it's just fall ball. Like, we're only in the month of October. Season does not start for another 2 or so months, a little over 2 months. So, for all you men's volleyball diehards, Pepperdine winning a scrimmage or Long Beach State winning a scrimmage doesn't really mean much, but unless it's like player development. But overall, the second scrimmage, I really got to see Long Beach State in action. So the format of the scrimmage obviously was 4 sets due to the time constraints. So the first 2 sets were to 25. Pepperdine won the first set, then Long Beach State won the second. And then the referees said to the coaches, let's have 2 sets to 15. And they both agreed on that just for time constraint purposes. And they wanted to give one more set for the road, just so that both teams can, instead of playing like a long extended third set, you basically are playing 2 small sets, which I think was a good idea from both coaches and for the referees. So after the second scrimmage, I actually caught up with Long Beach State men's volleyball coach Alan Knipe, and former guest of Set Point, by the way, following his team scrimmage and how they've been doing and what it's been like this fall. Because you also got to remember, they actually had a fall tournament last week as they got to play teams like Vanguard, UC San Diego. I think Northridge was a part of that echelon as well. But either way, here's my post-second scrimmage interview with Long Beach State head coach Alan Knipe. All right, this is Taryn Rodriguez of Set Point with Alan Knipe, Long Beach State men's volleyball coach. All right, Coach, your team just wrapped up its second scrimmage as you had 2 scrimmages on the day. What did you like from both of these scrimmages today?
Yeah, I thought it was great that the amount of sets. We just got done playing what it was 9 sets of volleyball. So it was good. Pep's a good team, well-coached team. It's a great match to play in the fall. So 2 teams played at a pretty high level at times, and then there was some breakdown, which is what you can kind of expect a little bit in the fall. But I think the best thing for us was the fact that we got so many guys through. All the guys on our program got a chance to get out there and play at least a set. We got to look at a lot of different combinations. And more importantly right now, we got to take a good look at what guys are doing on the court right now that's transferring from our training gym so that we can break that down, evaluate it, and then give them some feedback on Monday and set us up for the week and hopefully be a little bit better next weekend than we were this weekend.
Who are some players we could watch out for this season?
Yeah, well, I think the whole day there was a lot of good, but the guys that stand out, I thought Sotos was good. I thought Connor Bloom in the morning was really good. I thought Spencer Olivier was really good in the afternoon. I thought Mason Briggs did a great job passing the ball. I thought Clark and Aiden were good. I thought Mason Briggs continues to play at a really, really high level. I know I'm leaving some guys out. I think Dane Hillis did a good job in both matches. He got a chance to play in his role. We have a lot of guys doing a lot of good things, and for me, I don't want it to be where we have a guy with a ton of kills or guys that are carrying us. Right now in the fall, we want to be as balanced and as offensively balanced, I should say, as we possibly can. And I thought all the setters, we had 4 different setters out there today, but all the setters did a really nice job.
So that is an epic fail on my part. That was actually the first half of my interview with Alan Knipe. I meant to actually play the full one, so here's part 2. So obviously you had this scrimmage, and then you had your little mini tournament with like teams against Vanguard, UC San Diego, and a few other teams. How does it feel to be getting some reps against other teams as you prepare for the men's volleyball season?
Yeah, in the fall, we go really hard, obviously, in practice, and we lift really hard. And it's just nice to get to the weekend and see someone else on the other side of the net. So, and when you can when you can find really good opponents to play, it's even better. So, I know the guys were excited to get a chance to mix it up today. So, another good part. We're at the halfway part of the fall training. We know this is a very, very important part of what our season's going to look like, of what we're able to invest and get out of these 5 weeks. So, yeah, halfway through, and I like a lot of things, and my head's spinning on a lot of things I'd like to even be better at.
Coach, thank you for your time. Good luck this season.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
So that was my post-game or post-scrimmage interview with Long Beach State men's volleyball coach Alan Knipe. So what I liked from what he said, something I really liked what he said, was that he told me that his team is trying to be as balanced as possible. And you got to remember, this is a team that had a three-headed monster. Clark Godbold, Spencer Olivier, and Alex Nikolov, who is now playing professionally. So I really like his little philosophy right there. And it shouldn't just be one player. I think it should be everyone just trying to pull their weight. Whether they're a middle, whether they're an outside, whether they're an opposite, whether they're a setter, everything of that sort. So I really thought Long Beach State looked impressive. And it's just a scrimmage. Whether they were good or bad at a few things, it's only a scrimmage, and they're obviously going to get better. Obviously, they had their reps last week against some of the teams that I just mentioned in the interview, and I just mentioned a little while ago. But I really think Long Beach State is not going to skip a beat. Everyone that's going to think they're going to not be the same team without Alex Nikolov, well, you're sadly mistaken. And with Mark Moody coming back, it's just a whole another veteran presence. And they also have some other good up-and-rising players. Like Connor Bloom, he really impressed me. And I remember Connor Bloom from his high school days at Orange Lutheran, and I really thought he stood out in that first scrimmage. And like I said, Dane Hillis, he's getting his chance to play for Long Beach State at this time. And Alan Knipe said it best. Season's going to be here sooner than you think, because we're already at the end of October, and soon we're going to be in December. Obviously, we have November, but then soon, just like that, don't know if you heard that snap, but just like that, we're going to be in December, and that's going to be 1 month until the season begins. And then once that season begins, then it's basically soon that's the beginning of the season is going to be like a preview for conference play. And then once conference play begins, that's when it becomes a whole all-out war. So that was basically that for the Long Beach State men's volleyball scrimmage. Before I veer away from the men's volleyball side, the NCAA men's volleyball side of things, I actually do need to go over UCLA's men's volleyball schedule. So just got to also make note that UCLA played in the USC Fall Tournament as they beat USC, UC San Diego, and Vanguard while falling to UC Irvine. But we all know how good UC Irvine is. But that's not why I was talking about UCLA men's volleyball. They actually just released their schedule as their 2023 schedule. So let's go over that. So they start the season off at home, they start the season off in UC Santa Barbara at the A6 tournament as they play Cal State Northridge on Thursday, January 5th. Then the day after against UC San Diego. Then they are at UC Santa Barbara on January the 7th. Then UCLA plays. Then 1 week after, they play at home against Princeton. They play at the John Wooden Center. So I imagine that's like the mini gym and not like the Poly Pavilion, just because it's going to have probably going to have conflicts with like UCLA men's basketball. So it's totally understandable if that's in the John Wooden Center or not Poly Pavilion. January 20th, UCLA will actually play in Poly Pavilion to take on UC Santa Barbara, and then they'll also play UC San Diego the day after. So they basically get a taste of 2 times of some of the Big West Conference teams. And then on January 27th, they'll be at CSUN to take on Northridge. And then January 31st, UCLA is at George Mason. And then UCLA will head up for the Pac-12 Big Ten crossover. It's not really a Big Ten Pac-12 crossover, but those two are primarily in the Pac-12 and Big Ten. And soon those two are going to be in the Big Ten. So it's kind of going to make you wonder, is UCLA and USC going to be in the MIVA or the EIVA? Probably not, though, just because men's volleyball doesn't have a traditional Big Ten or Pac-12, but I digress. So UCLA heads up to Rec Hall in University Park to play Ohio State on February 3rd, a Friday, and then the day after they play Penn State. Then on February 9th, they will welcome Long Beach State to Poly Pavilion on Thursday, February 9th. And then the day after, they'll be heading down to the 562 to take on Long Beach State at the Pyramid. I definitely want to be in attendance for that one. When I was there last year, it was so electric. It was a lot of fans there, UCLA and Long Beach State alike. And that's basically going to be UCLA's final tune-up for MPSF play, as February 17th and 18th, they welcome BYU into Poly Pavilion. And then they have a random break from not Pac-12, MPSF play, as they play at UC Irvine February 24th, and they play UC Irvine on a Sunday at Poly Pavilion February 26th. Then they resume play against Concordia Irvine. They'll play at UCLA against Concordia on March 1st, a Wednesday, and then they'll play Concordia Irvine on March 3rd, a Friday. Then they have another really interesting, they have yet another tournament. They play in the Stan Sheriff Center, which is in Hawaii. So it's basically going to be the Outrigger, I think it's called the Outrigger Hawaii Tournament or something along those lines. Either way, they play Penn State on March 9th, a Thursday in Hawaii. Then they play Purdue Fort Wayne on Friday, March 10th. And then on March 11th, a Saturday, they will play the host Hawaii, which I think that's going to be electric. And the rest of the way, they return to MPSF play, as March 17th and 18th, they are at Stanford. March 31st and April 1st, they are at Grand Canyon. Then April 6th, on Thursday, they are home against USC. Then April 8th, they are on the road at Galen Center against USC. Then April 13th, a Thursday, they'll be at Pepperdine. And then April 15th, a Saturday, they'll be home against Pepperdine to close out the season. That's basically UCLA men's volleyball schedule, and they're going to be playing some big-time opponents. They've got Penn State twice, which I think is really good. They're playing I think they're playing all of the Big West Conference at least one time. They're playing Hawaii. They've got Northridge, San Diego, Irvine, Long Beach, and I'm blanking on another team. But I think they're playing a good portion of the Big West, as again, Long Beach, Santa Barbara, Irvine, San Diego, Northridge, Hawaii. Yep, that's the entire Big West. Because remember, in men's volleyball, there are 6 teams in the Big West and not 18. Just because Bakersfield, Riverside, and all those other teams don't have men's volleyball programs. Hopefully that changes soon. But anyway, yeah. And then also, like I said, UCLA is playing Penn State twice. That's a good opponent just because they're returning a lot of their players. They've got Ohio State, which is they're a good opponent. You saw what they did last year in terms of the regular season of the MIVA. That was craziness right there. Princeton is the reigning EIVA tournament champion, which I think is also a good opponent to face off against. And then obviously Hawaii, the reigning NCAA champion. That's going to be a nice little final tune-up in terms of their non-conference schedule, just because Hawaii is such a good team, and playing at Hawaii is no easy feat. So for UCLA, that's basically their schedule in a nutshell. Basically, you could find this one on the UCLA men's volleyball website, and I really am excited to see what John Spera's team has in store for us. So that is basically it for the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. Let's actually preview some CIF Southern Section girls volleyball. So we'll start with Division I. I know everyone probably doesn't want to hear high school girls volleyball, but some of these teams are actually nationally ranked. And it's kind of in my neck of the woods. And some of these players could actually be the stars of tomorrow. So starting in Division I, in case you all are kind of new to this, that CIF decided to change its format in Division I. They decided to have pool play, as they basically had the top 8 teams from Division 1 and 2. Basically, all those 8 teams are put in Division. They're put in Division 1, and then they face each other in pool play. So basically, every team gets at least 3 matches. And the team with the best record in pool play advances to play in the CIF Finals, which will be this Saturday at Cerritos College. So in Pool A, Miracosta was basically the top dog. But their final match wasn't easy. So first and foremost, they swept Lakewood and they swept Palos Verdes, both of which are 2 really good teams. I kind of expected it. I kind of thought Palos Verdes would give Miracosta a little bit more of a tough time, but when you're facing a team 3 times, you're eventually going to find out. You're eventually going to get those 2 tough battles, but then you're eventually going to figure out how the opponent does, and that's what Miracosta did. Nothing against Palos Verdes, though. And then their final matchup, Miracosta beat Mater Dei in 5 sets. So this one was quite the barn burner. I didn't go to this one, but here's the thing. Miracosta has always had a rough time against Mater Dei when it comes to the girls volleyball playoffs. My thing is for Miracosta was this. If they want to truly prove that they are one of the best, they need to actually beat one of the best. AKA a team that has made the finals the past 9 seasons. And Miracosta did that. They have a lot of good talent on their team. They really do. Ranging from players like Charlie Furbringer and then Drew Wright, who both of which are bound for college. Well, Furbringer is actually a junior, while Wright is a senior, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, for me, I'm not too surprised to see Miracosta coming out on top. But for me, I really thought I knew Mater Dei was going to push it to 5. But overall, it was a definite barn burner, and I really wish I could have gone to that one in person. I feel there are other talented players on Miracosta that I'm forgetting about, but that team is this is probably their best team they've had in a while, as that I've seen them play, and they're a freaking machine, and it's just Cam Green does an outstanding job coaching that team, and I really think that this is going to be something special to watch for when it comes to Miracosta versus Sierra Canyon. Speaking of Sierra Canyon, I gave away who won Pool B. So Sierra Canyon won their pool. They went a perfect 3-0. They beat Newport Harbor the first match, which I'm not going to really get too much into that, just because, let's just say after the first set, Sierra Canyon handled them quite easily. But that's not all on Newport Harbor. In their defense, they're facing some very talented girls, and they don't really, and this is no knock on them, but against Sierra Canyon, it's a complete mismatch against them. The second matchup that Sierra Canyon won was against Huntington Beach. Again, didn't go to that matchup, but but Sierra Canyon was able to handle them for the most part. I am not surprised with how much talent that team has. It's no surprise to see them back dominating. And then they basically had a spot in the finals locked up, as their final matchup was against Marymount, their league rival, well, their newly found league rival, as Sierra Canyon just moved into the Mission League. So the first 2 sets, Sierra Canyon took them, I wouldn't say with too much ease, but they took them quite nicely. Then in the 3rd and 4th set, Marymount came alive, won those 2 sets. So it was at that point, so it was going 5, but Sierra Canyon had already earned a spot into the finals. Even if Marymount were to win that one, Sierra Canyon had the tiebreaker due to number of sets won, and basically that would be how Sierra Canyon would win. Or would make the finals. Even if they lost to Marymount, which they actually didn't. Sierra Canyon won the final set 15-9, and they basically advanced to the CIF Southern Section Girls Volleyball Division I final. It's their first Division I finals appearance as a team. They have been in past CIF Southern Section championships, but they've been in the lower division, as they also were... I think they won in Division 4 and Division 3, and then CIF finally said, you're too good for these lower divisions, come on down to Division 1 and 2. And I remember in 2018, they lost to Mater Dei, the eventual champion, in the semifinals. Then 2019, before COVID happened, they lost to the eventual champion, Redondo Union. And then last season, Sierra Canyon lost to the eventual finalist, Mater Dei, in the quarterfinals. And now this year, Sierra Canyon has one of their most stacked teams in a while. And I really think that this Sierra Canyon team is something very special, as some other players on Miracosta that I did not mention was Taylor Deckert. No, not Taylor Deckert. I want to say her name is Chloe Hines. But either way, this Miracosta and Sierra Canyon are both really, really good. And leading Miracosta in terms of kills is Drew Wright. And then Taylor Rosenthal, that's her name. Or Tannen Rosenthal, my apologies. So Tannen Rosenthal is second on the team in kills. And then it's Chloe Hines, who is only a junior. So Rosenthal is up there in terms of kills. And then also you got to remember Charlie Furbringer. She not only plays setter, but she also plays right. She also can play a little right side as well. And this, like I said, Miracosta is just stacked all over the place, and it's going to be very tough for any team to beat Miracosta. Now, as for Sierra Canyon definitely earned their way into the CIF Southern Section Finals, and they too have themselves a great team. They have a lot of good talent on that team of theirs, as they are led by Olivia Babcock, who has 443 kills, and she is just a machine. And then also leading the team in kills is Jada Sion, who has 290 kills, and right behind her is Danica Rock. Yeah, that Danica Rock, who is third on the team in kills with 279. And she was battling injury at first. She played in a tournament, and she wasn't fully, healed. I think she had a plantar injury. But then she eventually was able to fully heal and basically just continue to do what she does best and get kills for her teams. So for Sierra Canyon and Miracosta, this is going to be the battle of a very storied program in Miracosta taking on, I would say, a newcomer, but the second coming of all of Los Angeles schools. Sierra Canyon in Chatsworth takes on Miracosta in Manhattan Beach. For my prediction, I think Miracosta wins. I hate to say it, but Miracosta is just stacked all over the place. And I think the number one thing to remember is that they are now at full strength. The previous time they faced certain opponents, they weren't at full strength. They honestly weren't. And I feel that Miracosta is finally figured it out, and they have pretty much been a machine. And they finally exorcised the Mater Dei demons, which have kind of plagued them in past playoffs. And then for Sierra Canyon, they're also a machine. I think these two are practically evenly matched. And this, I wish I could see this matchup, but I'm going to be out of town, so unfortunately I won't be able to see this high-level Division I girls volleyball matchup in the CIF Southern Section playoffs. I would not be surprised if Sierra Canyon and Miracosta went 5. And honestly, I really think it's going to be a barn burner. I think the team that serves the toughest is probably going to win. And in addition to serving tough, whoever passes the ball really well, I know it sounds cliche, but is going to win. Serving and passing are basically the top two fundamentals of volleyball, but I really think that whoever serves and passes tough and well is going to be the champion of the CIF Southern Section Division I. And it's going to be a new champion crowned, as Marymount unfortunately fell in pool play. And let me just tell you that Miracosta win over Mater Dei is significant, because this is going to be the first time since 2012, in 10 years, that Mater Dei will not be in the CIF Southern Section Girls Volleyball Championship. And keep in mind, their head coach, Dan Odell, has led them to that echelon from 2013 all the way to 2021. Well, no 2020 because there was no playoffs because of COVID-19 and whatnot. But overall, that was a landmark win for Miracosta, especially winning on the road. Or, I'm sorry, not on the road, winning at home. If they had won on the road, that would have been even more better. But honestly, you can't go wrong with winning at your gym. Miracosta is basically like a college gym. How many? I think they spent like over $1 million remodeling their old gymnasium. Regardless, it's a great gymnasium, and Miracosta, they have it going on. And on the topic of like top California girls volleyball teams, there is one team that kind of topples them. Okay, I think topple isn't really like the best word to use, but there is one team that kind of trumps them, and that is Cathedral Catholic. And let me tell you how good this Cathedral Catholic is. Oh boy. This Cathedral Catholic team is really good to the point where Cathedral Catholic of San Diego has not lost a set all year. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Cathedral Catholic has not lost a set all year long, whether it's in tournaments or whether it's in best-of-5 matches. They have not lost a set, and that is darn right impressive. They're next, I think they're in the San Diego section playoffs right now. Their next game is against La Costa Canyon, La Costa Canyon, I don't know the pronunciation, but either way, La Costa Canyon is their next opponent, and I'm really interested to see Cathedral Catholic and if they could possibly finish the season a perfect. First of all, it's definitely possible to finish the season a perfect 40-0, like Marymount did that last year. But if this team were to finish a season without dropping a set, reminder that Cathedral Catholic, as of this recording, October 31st, they have not lost a set all season. If they were to do that, they'd probably go down as one of the best high school volleyball teams in the nation. Because for you to go undefeated and for you to not drop a set is darn right impressive. One of Cathedral Catholic's top players, who is bound for Stanford, I want to get her name right, Julia Blyashov, and she's an outside hitter. She's a senior, and this is probably her best chance to win a CIF championship, just because after this she is heading off to Stanford, and she's going to be playing indoor volleyball, and she is going to do wonders, just like Elia Rubin. But I digress. So that's basically that for Division 1. I guess I should also mention the other pool play results. So, our placements. So, Mater Dei finished second in Pool A. Lakewood finished third in Pool A. And then Palos Verdes finished dead last in Pool A. In Pool B, Newport Harbor finished second in Pool B, which is kind of an interesting thing to see, just because nobody did not expect Newport Harbor to be in Division 1, let alone to win their league. But them to pull off two big wins, well, the Marymount one was really big because it's been a while since they've beaten Marymount, let alone beaten them in a best-of-5. And then they also beat their league rival Huntington Beach, which is never an easy win considering they are well coached by former set point guest Craig Pizzanti, mind you. But overall, Newport Harbor got second in Pool B, Marymount got third in Pool B, and then Huntington Beach got fourth in Pool B. But one thing to make note of is that all four of those teams that I just mentioned, they're all going to, or not all four, all of those teams that participate in the CIF Southern Section Division 1 playoffs, they are all going to state. So no matter what, even if they went 0-3, they're all going to state playoffs. The state playoffs will come out on the 6th of November, Sunday. Not this Sunday, but the following. Oh, no, it is this upcoming Sunday. Sorry. All right, so that is basically that for the CIF Southern Section Division 1 finals. Now for the Division 2 finals. So the Division 2 finals will consist of Aliso Niguel versus Vista Murrieta. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Vista Marietta obviously was the one that was supposed to make the final. But Elisa Nagel, they pulled off the upset on this past Saturday against Redondo Union. Now, I do feel bad for Redondo Union for a couple of reasons. One, they should have probably been in Division 1. They should have made the Division 1 cut. I don't know if they could have had the same... I don't know if they would have had the same results as maybe the likes of Marymount or Newport Harbor or Mater Dei, but you could make the argument that they could have been in Division 1. And then number 2, Redondo Union was on the road for a majority of the playoffs. They were on the road in round 2 when they played Foothill and Santa Ana, and they were on the road in the quarterfinals to take on Los Alamitos, which that's not the closest drive. And then they were on the road in the semifinals to take on Aliso Nagel. Now, from Redondo Beach all the way down to South Orange County in Aliso Viejo, that is one long drive, and that's brutal right there for the Seahawks. As Aliso Nagel beat them in 4 sets, they will play Vista Marietta, which actually had to go 5 with El Toro. But here's the thing about El Toro. My thing is for El Toro is last year they were the CIF Southern Section Division 3 champions. They eventually moved up to Division 1 and 2. They didn't have the wins to get into Division 1, but especially in the league that they play in, no offense, of course, but they went on a tear. They got a first-round bye. They beat one of their county rivals. I won't call them a crosstown rival, but they beat one of their county rivals in round 2. In the quarterfinals, they beat a talented Temecula Valley team, and then if it weren't for future BYU star Claire Little being on Vista Marietta, maybe, just maybe, Vista Marietta does not win that one. But El Toro is a good team. They are well coached. Unfortunately, this was Vista Marietta's time to shine. I had Vista Marietta going to the finals from the get-go. I was very surprised that Redondo lost in the semifinals, just because they're well coached. They have lots of talent on their team. I am shocked to say the least. But for Aliso Nagel, they earned it. Remember, this for those that actually don't know, that Aliso Nagel is actually the CIF Southern Section reigning Division 2 champion. And honestly, they are out to defend their crown. And some can make the argument that they could have made the Division 1 cut. Unfortunately, Newport Harbor kind of caught fire late in the season, and then Aliso Nagel lost their last 2 games of the season to San Clemente and San Juan Hills, so sadly they got put into Division 2, but it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So as for my predicted finals winner, I'm going to pick Vista Marietta. As talented as Aliso Nagel is, I think the Broncos are really, really up there in talent, and who wouldn't want to see Claire Little win a CIF championship? I mean, she's done it big for Vista Marietta ever since she was a freshman back in 2019. And remember, the poor girl didn't get a sophomore season due to COVID-19. Yes, unlike the Orange County schools that actually got to play a few games, the Inland Empire schools and some of the LA schools didn't get a chance to play in a season this season, just because I guess COVID-19 had its restrictions on some of the counties, but it is what it is, and she's one win away from winning a CIF Southern Section championship. Now, Vista Marietta already has some hardwood to their name with Claire Little, as they won a CIF state championship back in 2019. I think that was in Division 1, and it was quite the monument for them, because they became the second straight Inland Empire team to win a CIF state championship, following Temecula Valley, its league rival, of course. But for Vista Marietta, this is definitely their best chance to win a CIF Southern Section championship. I kind of want to say that they could have been in Division 1, but they were kind of outside that top 10 for a majority of the season. They just didn't have the wins to break through. But they could make some noise in state, though. But I'm picking Vista Marietta to win the CIF Southern Section Division 2 championship. But I do like the story that Aliso Nagel brings. Their head coach is Rochelle Whitting. And I know you're probably thinking, oh God, Taryn's going to bore us with another story. No, let me tell you all this. Rochelle Whitting has a daughter on the team, and she actually plays for Aliso Nagel, which is quite nice, if you ask me. And last year they won the CIF Southern Section Division 2 championship, and I did interview her last year, and I asked her what it meant for her daughter to be playing on the team, and she basically said this in a nutshell. Off the court, it's basically mom and daughter. On the court, it's basically coach or something like that. But at the end of the day, they loved playing volleyball. She loved seeing her daughter play volleyball, and even whether they win or lose, they still have their families to go home to and whatnot. And that's kind of the reason why I like Elisa Nagel's little story right there. Just because Coach Rochelle Whitting's daughter, Danette Whitting, who's actually a senior, her playing on the team is quite something special, and part of me really wants Elisa Nagel to come out on top, but I think this is Vista Murrieta's time. I don't know if Vista Murrieta has won a CIF Southern Section Championship in the past, but this is kind of their best chance to win one right now. So either way, I got the Broncos winning, but don't be surprised if Elisa Nagel has one of the more scrappier defenses out there. Like, I really think they're a scrappy team. They pass the ball well. They serve the ball well. They've got a lot of raw talent on their team. And I think you can't go wrong with them. They did lose a good chunk of their players to graduation, and they also lost one of their players to having been transferred. But overall, this Elisa Nagel team is showing no signs of weakness. But I got to go with Vista Murrieta. I will eat my crow next week if Vista Murrieta does not win, but I got the Broncos winning over the Wolverines. So that is that for some CIF Southern Section girls volleyball talk. I limited it to only Division I and Division II, just because that's where some of the more higher ranked teams in the state or in the nation lie. I'm sorry if y'all want to hear Division III all the way down to Division IX, but for time constraint purposes, I just cannot get through all of that. Like, we're almost an hour into this this show as we speak. Anyway, jumping on into some NCAA women's volleyball. So, basically, this past Saturday, in addition to covering NCAA men's volleyball, I also got to cover some NCAA women's volleyball as Long Beach State played Cal Poly in a Big West Conference matchup. So, both these teams were coming off wins. The Beach swept Cal State Bakersfield, while the Mustangs swept Cal State Fullerton. It was quite the battle, as the first set, Long Beach State fell behind, but then eventually turned the tide, started blocking better, and they eventually won the first set 25-19. Second set, Cal Poly led all of the way until Long Beach State nearly tied it a couple times, but then Cal Poly just pulled away, won the second set, 25-22. Third set, Long Beach State just took full charge, won that third set, 25-16. They did not trail a whole lot, and they really strutted their stuff. Fourth set was kind of the opposite. Cal Poly basically strutted their stuff. They served really tough, blocked really well. They won that fourth set, 25-16. Now, the fifth set was wild. There were quite a number of hustle plays from both these teams. Cal Poly went up 8-5 following the side change, but then Long Beach tied it up, and then Long Beach State eventually went up, and then Long Beach State was up 12-11, and then Cal Poly went up 13-12, and it looked as if it was over, but then Long Beach State got a little bit of a gift from Cal Poly as Cal Poly missed the serve into the net. It was such a backbreaker. Then at 13-13, this was kind of a weird point. So at first, hence the word at first, Long Beach State and Cal Poly were having a big-time rally, and then unfortunately one of Long Beach State's players, Victoria O'Sullivan, hurts her knee. I guess she fell awkwardly, and she had to be carried off the court, and poor thing, I just felt horrible. And eventually the point was replayed. Now, it was to be determined on if Cal Poly was going to win that point, but both these teams were just giving it their all. Like, anyone could have won that previous rally. You had to have been at the match or seen the match to have known about it. But on the replayed point, Morgan Chacon knocked in a big kill, and that put Long Beach State at match point. And then at match point, Cal Poly, there was some interesting calls overall on the night, and I'm surprised there was not a centerline violation called on Cal Poly or a double. Like Tyler Hildebrand, the Long Beach State head coach, was going ballistic after the missed calls in that fifth set, on that point, mind you. And then Cal Poly accidentally served it out of, or not served it, they free-balled it out of bounds. So, unfortunately for Cal Poly, that's how they lost. And that's kind of a heartbreaking way to go out. But I guess, I don't know if that was the case. I don't know if the person that, like, forced the ball over was, like, a little distracted by it. But she forced it over, and it went out of bounds, and that's how Long Beach State won. So, leading the way for Long Beach State in the win was Morgan Chacon, who had 15 kills. Victoria O'Sullivan, before her injury, had 13 kills. Callie Schwarzenbach added 11 kills, and Katie Kennedy added 10 kills. As a team, Long Beach State only hit 160, but that was partially due to some of the great blocking that Cal Poly had. Speaking of blocking, Long Beach State outblocked Cal Poly 14-19, and they barely outdug Cal Poly 67-65. Now, one thing that was big for Long Beach State was that they held Cal Poly to only one service ace. This is a Cal Poly team that probably leads the Big West in service aces, as the only one that had the service ace was London Haberfield. Also, Cal Poly missed 18 serves, while Long Beach State only missed half of that. That was what really hurt Cal Poly, and as y'all are about to listen in on this next little post-game interview following the post-game breakdown, Cal Poly had quite a number of boo-boos in that fifth set, and the missed serves really what cost them. And Maya Dvoracek, she's one of their most top talented servers. She did not have one service ace on the night. That is partially due to Long Beach State having such great serve receive, and Long Beach State did such a great job of making sure Maya Dvoracek wasn't going to get hers in terms of the service line. I want to say she leads the conference in service aces, but she has a wicked jump serve, and Tyler told me following the match that Long Beach State was preparing all for their tough serving. So, as for Cal Poly, they were led by Tommy Stockham, who had 19 kills. Dvoracek added 17 kills. Lizzie Markovska and Meredith Phillips each had 10 kills. As a team, Cal Poly hit 198, but they hit 0 in that fifth set. But I will say this, Long Beach State also hit negative 53. And overall, they played really good. Cal Poly is such a good team. They don't get any justice from them playing such a very tough schedule, but that schedule has really toughened them up and benefited them going into conference play. And this was another 5-setter. Like I said, this is the new norm when it comes to Big West Conference play. Before I get into my post-game interview with Cal Poly coach Caroline Walters, Hawaii and UC Davis also went 5, and Hawaii narrowly won in 5. Well, I shouldn't say narrowly, but they won in 5. But overall, like I said, this is basically the new norm. We're going to be seeing a lot of 5-setters, and I think now that everyone has seen one another in at least once in the Big West Conference, I think now we're going to try to see some adjustments from some of these teams. But don't be surprised if we see 5-set matches. So I caught up with Cal Poly women's volleyball coach Caroline Walters following her team's loss to Long Beach State and what her team probably could have done to right the ship against the Beach. All right, Coach, your team fell just a little short to a talented Long Beach State team on the road. Back and forth action. That fifth set could have gone either way. What were some things you liked in this match despite the loss?
I thought we served and passed pretty well for probably three sets, and we fell a little short in 5 and at times in 3, but I thought passing was far improved for our team. So good to see that response. Meredith Phillips is killing the ball at a high percent. You want to go to that at the end of a match. And I thought when we were creating, opportunities defensively, that was fueling kind of our ability to score some runs of points as well.
Now, obviously, now that you mentioned Meredith, Meredith and Lizzie stepped up in addition to Maya and Tommy having big nights. What can you say about those two helping out Maya and Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you want Lizzie to be a little bit more efficient. She's hitting 0.70 on the match, so making just some better decisions here and there. But from a passing perspective, I thought she did a really good job. And Meredith, we want to feed her the ball. She's second, and this will help her actually a little bit, but second in the conference in hitting efficiency. So if you can be super efficient and we can pass the ball and get it to you, I think it lightens the load for a Tommy and a Maya for sure.
Now, if I remember correctly, last week you started 44 at libero. This week tonight you started London at libero. Is that a little new science experiment going on, or what's the game plan on that?
Yeah, like I told you, we take a lot of stats at practice. We're tracking first contacts and serve receive. We're tracking digs. We're tracking all kinds of things. And London has been pushing, Jolie pretty consistently in numbers week by week. And London came in for us against Bakersfield and did a fantastic job in 3, 4, and 5 and helped us win that match. And then we needed to use her last night against Fullerton. She came in and stepped up. So I thought London came in and did a really good job. I think she was really solid in first contact. She dug a good amount of balls. Was super solid in second contacts after the setter took them. So for that to be, a first start as a freshman, very pleased with that.
And obviously it's another 5-setter, which is basically the new norm for the Big West Conference. What are ways your team could probably prepare yourself for that 5-set match, as it's basically grueling, you're on the road, and like you said last week, it's tough to win on the road?
Yeah, I think we prepared very, very, very well. I liked our mindset all day. We were here for an hour earlier in the day. It was all about business. We had 11 unforced errors in set 5. So if you give a team 11 points, you're not going to win that set. So I don't think it has anything to do with our preparation. It has to do with taking care of business when it gets down to the wire.
Now, I imagine you're back at home next week.
Finally.
Yeah. Who do you play?
We have Northridge on Friday and Santa Barbara on Saturday. Okay,
so obviously the Santa Barbara one is big time, but the Northridge one could be a trap game, possibly. What's it going to take to take down the Matadors and the Gauchos?
Yeah, we have to get back. I thought our serving kind of broke down in the 5th set, and I thought we could have been more aggressive kind of over the entirety of that match. So we have to get back in and be good about, using our serve as a weapon. Northridge is good. They've got some athletic kids playing across all positions in the front row, running a 6-2. So we have to be ready to play 2 teams that are running, decent tempo in 6-2s, and kind of nice that they're both in that mode and we can prepare for it all week long.
So that was my post-game interview with Caroline Walters. So for Cal Poly, my takeaway is this. They didn't play bad, but some of their unforced errors, as Coach Set mentioned, it did not do them any justice. You cannot give a team 11 unforced errors, because that right there is basically 2/3 of the set. Long Beach State had 4 kills in that 5th set, and then the other 11 were basically either hitting errors, service errors, or just errors altogether from Cal Poly, and that just doesn't get the job done. And Cal Poly is a good team. I'm just going to say that right now. Cal Poly is the real deal. They've got a lot of good players on that team. Stockham is a great player. Dvorak is a great player. Phillips, as Coach just mentioned, she is one of the most efficient hitters. And Lizzie Markovska, she's emerging. She's blossoming well. Kate Slack also could see some more action at the middle. And you never know what could happen with some of the setters, such as Eam Bullis, who I think she had a dump kill attempt, but I'm not entirely certain. Either way, Cal Poly is a legit team. They are 9-3 along with Long Beach State. It's not bad, but here's the thing. Long Beach State is probably the hottest team in the Big West Conference. They have won 8 in a row. I want to say the last time they won 8 in a row was 2014. Going into that match, Long Beach State had won 7 in a row, which was the first time since 2016. I think back in the Brian Gimellaro days. But either way, Long Beach State's playing great volleyball as of late, and the Big West Conference is now on notice. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Beach has in store for everyone in the Big West Conference, because tomorrow they play, tomorrow as of this recording, being recorded on Halloween being a Monday, tomorrow they play at home against Cal State Fullerton, and then Friday they are on the road against Hawaii. That's going to be a barn burner right there. And then, as you just heard, Cal Poly plays at home against Santa Barbara, which the road has kind of been the house of horrors for the Gauchos. They had to go 5 with UC Irvine, narrowly won that one. They lost to Long Beach State, which has been their boogeyman. And then also they lost at Hawaii, which it's never easy to win at Hawaii. But Long Beach State's going to be really tested this week, as they've got Fullerton and they've got Hawaii. And then the following week, they are at Northridge and at Santa Barbara. Speaking of Santa Barbara, they did beat their 2 opponents. They beat UC Irvine quite nicely at the Thunderdome last Thursday, and then yesterday, being Sunday, they beat UC San Diego in 3 sets at the Thunderdome. But now they get tested this week. They are on the road, and we'll see what happens with the Gauchos. But overall, I'm really excited to see what Long Beach State, Cal Poly, Hawaii, and the Santa Barbara can do. So that's going to basically do it for the first gist of NCAA women's volleyball. When we come back, we've got a lot more NCAA women's volleyball to talk about. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our shows, such as Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, Show That Never Sleeps with Pierre Moss and Harrison Glazer. And 1 hour before this show goes live, we have Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. Adam does a great job breaking down all of the Chicago sports. But now let's get on into the second half of the show. So we got some more NCAA women's volleyball to discuss, as we got to address the elephant in the room. The big upset that happened last Wednesday. We had Wisconsin, number 5 Wisconsin, taking down number 1 Nebraska at Wisconsin Fieldhouse in Madison. So, long story short, Wisconsin swept Nebraska, but the first 2 sets were rather close. It looked as if Wisconsin was going to blow out Nebraska in those 2 sets, but remember, this is Nebraska we're talking about. Nebraska is well known for making comebacks against certain teams. As we welcome Mike Pat in the chat room, he says, "Good evening, sir. Thank you for tuning in." But back to Wisconsin and Nebraska. Here's the thing. No lead is safe when it comes to Nebraska. Whether it's on the road or at home, basically there's no lead safe when it comes to Wisconsin or when it comes to Nebraska women's volleyball. As the first set, Wisconsin took it 25-23. They also took the second set 25-23. Again, they had to stave off some Nebraska comebacks, as Wisconsin actually was up 10 in that second set. And then eventually, to Nebraska's credit, they tied it up at 23-23. But then Wisconsin scored the last 2. And I'm just thinking, okay, well, there's no way Wisconsin's going to blow a 10-point lead. Eventually, Nebraska tied it. And then Wisconsin needed the last 2 points to get the win in that set. And that set I feel that set kind of deflated Nebraska a little bit. Because you worked all that so hard to get back from a 10-point deficit. They tied it up, only to see them lose the last 2 points. It's a heartbreaking way to go down, but you just got to learn to get up off the mat, as Wisconsin took the third set 25-18 in the match. As Wisconsin, with that win, they actually tied themselves atop the Big Ten standings with Nebraska and Ohio State. As Wisconsin was led by Sarah Franklin, who had 21 kills. She almost had half of Wisconsin's kills, as she hit 381 on the night. As a team, Wisconsin hit 207. Also, Devin Robinson chipped in 9 kills. Izzy Ashburn chipped in 25 assists and 10 digs. Julia Orzel added 11 digs. As a team, Wisconsin had 52 digs to Nebraska's 46. In terms of blocks, Nebraska narrowly outblocked Wisconsin 9.5 to 9. Nebraska only had 1 ace, while Wisconsin had a nice little ratio of service aces and service errors with 6 aces and 6 errors. And overall, the third set was where Wisconsin really came to life. Nebraska, on the other hand, hit 162, which isn't really characteristic of them. They were led by Becca Alec, who had 13 kills. Whitney Lorenstein and Maddie Kubik each chipped in 7 kills. One thing I did notice in Nebraska is that they ran a 6-2 offense. I don't think they were doing that before, but maybe they're doing that now. I mean, John Cook is that coach who likes to implement different game plans as the season goes on. As Nicklin Hames and Annie Evans had 15 and 12 assists respectively. Hames chipped in 14 digs, while Lexi Rodriguez chipped in 12 digs. So overall, for Nebraska, it wasn't their night, but here's my thing. I'm going to defend them for a little bit. The fact that they almost came back from deficits in the first 2 sets is what really has me thinking that this team is not going to go anywhere. Obviously, this team lost, but they're better off losing now than losing when it truly matters. I understand they're still going to hear it from Wisconsin fans saying, "Oh, we've beaten you, 9 straight times now?" I'm sorry, Nebraska fans, don't get angry at me, but there was this little inkling in my mind that was thinking Nebraska was not going to win this one. I know it's in Madison, but also I just thought that Nebraska was at least going to win 1 set. But I feel this loss is going to be the best thing for Nebraska, because now that they got the loss out of the way, they can't play as worse as that. The only way they play worse is if they fail to cross 20 or they fail to even get to 15. I'm just saying, y'all, I think Nebraska is just getting started, and this loss is going to wake them up and eventually probably be the turning point of their season. Just because it's tough to beat a team 3 times in one season, and there could be the possibility of Nebraska facing Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament. Remember, that was the case last year, where Wisconsin swept the first meeting, Wisconsin won the second meeting in 4 sets, and then Wisconsin narrowly escaped in 5 in the NCAA championship. There's some other upsets that happened this past week from the Big Ten, as we had Illinois. I almost wanted to mention this last week, but Illinois upset, what was it, number 11 Penn State? This was played at Huff Hall in Champaign, Illinois, as Illinois actually won this one in 4 sets. The first set was kind of tight, but then Illinois eventually pulled away. Illinois won it a little bit more easily in the second set. Third set, Penn State kind of won it a little bit more easily. And then fourth set, Illinois didn't trail and there were no ties, but Penn State was not giving up without a fight, as Illinois had to win that one by 2. Illinois was led by Raina Terry, who had 24 kills, while Kayla Burbage had 10 kills. Brooke Mosier added 9 kills and 9 digs, as Caroline Barnes chipped in 11 digs. As a team, Illinois hit 300, which was quite nice, and I think that's very good when you're facing Penn State. When you face Penn State, you're either going to have to out-hit them or out-defend them. Illinois did a little of both. They also had 15 blocks to Penn State's 10, and despite getting outdug by 4, they made up in that department in terms of the service aces, as they had 5 aces to Penn State's 2, despite having 5 more service errors than Penn State did. As for Penn State, they hit 220. They were led by Kashana Williams, who had 15 kills. Alexa Markley added 14 kills, and Zoe Wetherington chipped in 10 kills. Salasia Alasia led the offense with 39 assists to go along with 9 digs. And then Maddie Bilinovich added 13 digs. As, like I said, Penn State hit 220 on the night. It wasn't the best outing, but again, it's tough to win on the road, and I wish I could have given this match a little bit more love in my previews last week. I guess that's what happens when I overlook certain matches. Mike Pat said, did FSU win it all? Unfortunately, no, not yet. They had themselves kind of a rough week, as I don't know who they lost to on Friday, but they lost to Boston College on Sunday, which, I don't know, it's not really the best loss to have. I mean, they're in 4th place in the ACC, but it's a distant 4th place from Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Louisville, or Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Pitt. Pitt's leading the ACC, but Florida State, they're doing okay. And Mike Pat says, every team needs those losses. Winning all day, every day leads to complacency. Facts right there. Mike Pat could not have said that any better. And excellent comment right there from Mike Pat in the live Spreaker chat room. That's what happened with Texas. They had won so much before losing to Iowa State. I think that Iowa State loss is kind of the best thing for Texas. And this is going to be the same thing for Nebraska. I think losing to Wisconsin is going to be the best thing for them, because now it kind of wakes them up. And it adds more fuel to the fire for when Wisconsin has to travel down to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. So, yeah, I really think Mike hit it on the head. Winning all day, every day leads to complacency. Not every team could be the Long Beach State team that went undefeated and is now the last team to remain undefeated. But I digress on that one. I want to say it was like 96 that Long Beach State last was that had that winning season where they went undefeated and won the championship. But I digress on that. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, and this was kind of the last notable big upset we had, jumping over to Friday, we had Northwestern. Oh my goodness, the little engine that could. Northwestern took down Purdue, number 12 Purdue, in 5 sets in Evanston, Illinois. Northwestern narrowly won the first set, 25-23. Purdue returned the favor and narrowly won that one, 25-23. Northwestern kind of laid down the wood, won that third set, 25-18. Purdue won the fourth set, 25-17. Fifth set was close for the most early on, but then Northwestern kicked it into high gear after the side change, and they eventually won the fifth set, 15-11. And my goodness, Northwestern, that's got to be the best story right there. Northwestern, it's been a really long minute since Northwestern last made the NCAA tournament, let alone had themselves big-time wins. Remember, this is a team that beat a ranked Pepperdine at the time. This is a team that beat Minnesota. That was their first ever top 10 win in team history. They also beat Purdue for the first time since 2016. This Northwestern team is very special. I would not be surprised if this team made the NCAA tournament. Leading Northwestern in the victory was Temi Thomas Ailara, who had 25 kills, while Catherine Randorf and Hannah Lesiak chipped in 13 kills. Each chipped in 13 kills. As a team, Northwestern hit 158, but this was the mind-blowing stat right here. Northwestern outdug Purdue 80 to 61. That's what's going to help you win those matches. I understand Northwestern got outblocked by Purdue 16.5 to 8, but 80 digs to 61. Their libero, Megan Miller, had 30 digs. Big time right there. Also, Temi Thomas Ailara had 10 digs, and Ely Stinson added 12 digs. So, for Northwestern, they don't have, sometimes they don't have the stats that stand out, other than the digs, of course, but they have the scrappiness, and that leads to those digs, and that eventually leads to those wins. And what truly matters is the wins. Like, stats don't mean squat diddly unless you get the win. And the wins are more important than statistics. I think Bill Belichick even made a quote about that. As for Purdue, they were led by Eva Hudson, who had 19 kills. She's kind of been the golden girl for Purdue. I wouldn't be surprised if she won National Freshman of the Year. Maddie Chin chipped in 12 kills, and then Raven Colvin added 7 kills. They had 10 less kills than Northwestern, as Purdue hit 190 on the night, which isn't great, especially since they hit 105 in that fifth set and they only had 5 kills. But what can you do? The opposing team had 80 digs. What are you supposed to do against that? Purdue ran its 6-2 offense as Megan Renner had 24 assists, while Grace Ballenseifer added 15. Maddie Schermerhorn added 23 digs. She was the only player in double digits in terms of digs for the Boilermakers. So it is back to square one for Purdue. They did bounce back as they beat Indiana, their crosstown rival, or in-state rival, but this is why I'm not too high on Purdue. I think they're just too young. And this is no knock on the Boilermakers. They're a good team, but I just think their youth is really starting to get exposed right about now. And I really think that's kind of a little concerning if you're a Purdue fan. But overall, they still have a little bit of time left. They're kind of entering the season where everyone is starting to get familiarized with everyone in the conference. And this is basically where round 2 begins in conference play. I probably could have titled this one Round 2 Begin, or could have titled last week Round 2 Begin. But overall, it's kind of how it's supposed to be when it comes to some of these conferences. And Purdue, I think they could still make noise in the NCAA tournament. They're obviously making some noise in the Big Ten, but I don't know how far they can go. I think they can go maybe this Elite 8, Sweet 16 for sure, but I don't think they go any farther than Elite 8. I probably have them projected at Sweet 16, but that's none of my business. So, a couple of upsets that kind of caught my eye, but I'm not overly surprised, was that USC lost twice over the weekend to Utah and Colorado. Now, you're all probably wondering, well, that is an upset since USC was ranked. No, I don't think it's an upset just because it's so tough to win at Colorado, and it's very tough to win at Utah. Utah is so underrated, it's not even funny. They don't have the wins that they did last year. They lost a good chunk of players to graduation. But Utah, this Utah team is something special. Remember, a couple weeks ago, they knocked off Washington. And this week, they knocked off USC on its home floor in straight sets. Yes, the sets were close, but honestly, it just goes to show that Utah is not going anywhere. And USC, I don't know what went wrong with USC. They're just going to have to work a little harder when playing on the road. I mean, they beat Utah and Colorado the first go-around, but that was at Galen. On the road, it's a whole other animal right there, especially since they got stomped on by Stanford prior to this series where they faced the Rocky Mountain schools. And obviously Stanford really laid down the wood. And then Colorado, USC started strong, and then Colorado started picking up steam ASAP. And that's not a good sign if you're USC. So USC went from possible Pac-12 hopeful to log jammed into third place with Washington and Washington State. Now, Utah did also lose this past weekend, as they also lost to UCLA in straight sets on Sunday. Now, UCLA is kind of that borderline team that could make the NCAA tournament, but they don't really have the true standout-ish wins to make it. They do have a win over Hawaii, leading the Big West. They have a win over Utah. Okay. They went 5 with Washington, decent, but they still have a few other not-so-good losses. And then they also lost in 3 to San Diego, which, that's not good. Anyway, they still have a couple of bad losses. They lost to Utah State, and then obviously losing to LMU hurt them, and then losing to Colorado twice, and then also losing to Utah the first go-around didn't help their matters, and then losing to USC didn't help. So for UCLA, they have a lot of ground to make up, and their margin of error is very, very dwindling. They can't afford too many bad losses here and there. They basically either have to pull an upset, or they're going to have to, which would probably mean they have to beat, well, USC isn't even ranked, but they're eventually going to have to pull off a ranked win. And I know they have at least 1 or 2 ranked teams down the road when it comes to their schedule. As UCLA, they do have Oregon and Stanford, and they have a scrappy Washington State team that they're about to face in the last week of the season, but we're not quite there yet. But beating Stanford or Oregon, that's kind of their golden ticket to winning or make it into the NCAA tournament, and maybe beating SC as well. But other than that, if they want to have any hope of basically finishing 500 overall, they'll have to basically, well, they're 11-20, or not 11-20, 11-10 overall, and they have 8 matches remaining. They play Arizona and Arizona State. Those should be wins, considering they're at home. They're facing Cal following that. That's definitely a win. Stanford, I don't know if they'll win. I don't think they have the horses to keep up. And then Oregon, that's at Oregon. Tough. That might be a tough one right there. Oregon State, that's going to be that should probably be a win right there. I know they just beat Colorado a week or so ago, but I don't see UCLA losing to Oregon State. So the Oregon State, Arizona, and Cal win should put them up to a record of 15 wins, and the losses to Oregon and Stanford should put them at 12 losses. So if they get those wins over those said teams, they guarantee themselves a 500 record. Now, guaranteeing themselves a 500 record isn't my biggest concern. My biggest concern is, can they beat Stanford? Can they beat Oregon? Can they beat SC or Washington State? Washington State, I don't remember if they were receiving votes, but that's not an easy opponent to beat. That's going to be their boogeyman right there, especially since they're heading up to Pullman to take on Washington State. And then they have to head down the road to take on SC at Galen. So it's going to be quite the interesting ending for UCLA. I think UCLA could be on the path of what USC went through last season, as they narrowly finished 500, and they just didn't have the standout wins to make the NCAA tournament. So to close out the upsets from last week, so this upset, I hate to ride this team, to bag on this team a lot more, but Pepperdine, they lost again. They lost to San Francisco. Though San Francisco, they're not on the level of Gonzaga. They're a little bit more higher level than Gonzaga is. Like, Gonzaga is like in the basement of the West Coast Conference. San Francisco, they reverse swept Pepperdine. Now, I did get confirmation that Rachel Aarons is, quote-unquote, on IR from an outside source. So the outside source did say that Rachel Aarons is on IR, aka injured reserve, but Pepperdine needs a Rachel Aarons ASAP. If they don't get Rachel Aarons back sooner rather than later, they're going to struggle in those last few games against San Diego, LMU, and BYU. LMU is actually in third place in the West Coast Conference, and dare I say it, could they make the NCAA tournament? LMU does have a decent win over Pepperdine. They took San Diego to 5, which no other team has yet to do so in the WCC. And I'm sure they have some other good matchups, other good losses on their schedule. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do them justice if they got swept. But LMU, here's my problem with LMU. They're not in a Power 5 conference. West Coast Conference is not a Power 5 conference, which is unfortunate. For LMU to make the NCAA tournament, they're going to have to either A, beat Pepperdine again, B, beat BYU, C, somehow beat San Diego, or D, all of the above. If they could do D, then boy howdy, then they're for sure a lock. But for LMU, it's going to be pretty tough for them to make the NCAA tournament. But we'll see what happens. I mean, they could, obviously the West Coast Conference is taking BYU and San Diego, even though BYU got the brakes beaten off them against San Diego a week ago. But overall, for the West Coast Conference, for Pepperdine, I'm just concerned for them. Like, how do you get reverse swept by San Francisco? I know San Francisco is good, but you were at your home court. If you were at San Francisco, I totally understand, but you were at Firestone. Leading Pepperdine in the loss was Emily Helmuth with 17 kills. She only hit 176. This is what I mean. You know your offense is missing Rachel Aarons when your freshman, credit to her, of course, is leading the way in kills. Grace Chillingworth added 15 kills. She hit 351, only had 2 hitting errors, and Meg Brown added 12 kills. Vanessa Polk also chipped in 7 kills as well. As a team, Pepperdine hit 188, which was slightly worse than San Francisco's 197. They did have 73 digs to San Francisco's 72, but here's where they kind of got hurt a lot in this category. They got outblocked 18.5 to 12, which isn't too big of a gap when you look at it, but 18.5 to 12 is kind of a lot. And especially since here's the sad thing. San Francisco had 11 kills in that 5th set, and Pepperdine only had 8 while hitting 160. Leading San Francisco in the win was Claire I'm going to mess this one up. Claire Crehans. I think that's how it's pronounced. Claire Crehans with 21 kills, while Shaya Richardson added 15 kills. Aylin Ayub led the offense with 39 assists to go along with 16 digs, while Abby Wadus added 19 digs. But overall, San Francisco, I'll give credit to San Francisco. They're actually one of the hotter teams as of late in the West Coast Conference. I mean, outside of San Diego, of course. For Pepperdine, they have to get Rachel Aarons back. Normally when you're on IR, you're missing at least 4 weeks in terms of the NFL. But for Pepperdine, they need her back ASAP, especially when they get into the last few games where they have to face LMU, BYU, and San Diego. Like, that is going to be a gauntlet right there. I think they get those opponents at home, if I'm not mistaken, but they still need Rachel Aarons back. Like, they need her back as soon as possible. My thing is, for Pepperdine, they could make the NCAA tournament on one part of their wins over Minnesota, and then their wins over Minnesota, Baylor, and Washington, but then their losses to, what's their face, San Francisco, Gonzaga. Okay, San Francisco isn't too terrible, but the loss to Gonzaga really hurts them. So overall, Pepperdine making the NCAA tournament is going to be very close. So that's basically going to do it for the NCAA upsets from week number 9. Some stat stuffers to go over. We had Gabby Blossom of San Diego reaching 4,000 assists this past weekend against Portland. She did transfer from Penn State, but she was able to come over to San Diego to basically get her 4,000th plus assist, and she's basically doing it big for those Toreros. Andrea Fuentes of Wake Forest notched her 4,500th assist this past weekend against Pitt, as it wasn't easy playing Pitt, but that's a bright spot for Fuentes. Heading over to the kill category, Janelle Fitzgerald actually became the all-time kill leader at Texas State this past weekend against Arkansas, a team that is susceptible to Janelle Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald surpassed Makenda Smith, who was the previous kill leader at Texas State. Charlie Nego of North Carolina notched her 1,500th kill this past weekend against number 10 Georgia Tech. Most of her kills came when she was at Notre Dame, but the fact that she got 1,500 kills or 1,500 is quite nice. Jenna Story, in terms of digs, Jenna Story moved up to third all-time in NCAA women's volleyball history, as she has 2,792 digs and counting. Heaven knows, hopefully she'll be able to get up to the very top, and who knows how good Wright State is. I probably need to keep an eye on Wright State as it is, just because I would like to see her become the all-time dig leader, just so I could basically witness that, and I think it would be quite nice. It would be very nice as I pull up the Wright State schedule, but enough on that later. Georgia Tech, the standout player, Julia Bergman, who I think could be a potential Player of the Year candidate, surpassed 1,000 digs this past weekend as she became the fifth Georgia Tech player to surpass 1,500 kills and 1,000 digs, I think, in a Georgia Tech uniform. I don't know if that's in a season. I highly doubt that it's in one season. I just think that's in a full career at Georgia Tech. Staying in the ACC in terms of the dig category, Boston College's Anna Murphy surpassed 1,000 digs on October 16th against NC State. Also need to make note that Boston College pulled off two impressive wins for that matter, as they beat Miami and Florida State, which was pretty good. I'm sorry, Mike, I had to bring it up, but Florida State lost to Boston College. And then jumping over to the coaches' wins, we had Kelly Sheffield surpassing 250 wins at Wisconsin, as he's coached for 22 years, and 10 of those seasons have come from the Badgers, as he has 423 wins altogether as a head coach, but 250 of those wins have come from Wisconsin, and he's, like I said, he's been coaching there for 22 years. Speaking of veteran coaches, Jared Elliott, the Texas head coach, surpassed 600 career wins as a head coach as Texas beat Texas Tech this past weekend. They got up off the mat and they beat Texas Tech, which was downright impressive, and that's good. My NCAA Team of the Week this week, as I mentioned it on Twitter, but I might as well mention this now, it's Wisconsin. There's no doubt in my mind Wisconsin deserves it. Wisconsin beat the number one team in the nation, and they followed that up by not getting too high and not getting too low when they lost that third set against Minnesota, by beating Minnesota in a rematch of the Battle of the Border. Now, that was a big-time win, just because it's going to boost them into the most recent coaches poll, and it shows that Wisconsin still has what it takes to keep up with the big-time teams. I really think that this Wisconsin team is not going to go anywhere, and they're finding their footing really quick. I would say that they're back, but when did they ever leave? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, that's going to do it for this week, or last week's notables and stat stuffers. Now we got to jump on over to the most recent AVCA Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll. So the AVCA Women's Coaches Poll, 25 through 21, consists of Iowa State at 25, UCF at 24, Houston at 23, Western Kentucky at 22, and Rice at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Kentucky at 20, Washington at 19, BYU at 18, Marquette at 17, and Oregon at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Penn State at 15, Purdue at 14, Creighton at 13, Florida at 12, and Baylor at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Georgia Tech at 10, Minnesota at 9, Stanford at 8, Pitt at 7, and Ohio State at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Louisville at 5, Nebraska at 4. Whew, big drop from number 1. Wisconsin at 3, San Diego at 2, and your new number 1 team in the AVCA Women's Volleyball Division I Coaches Poll is Texas. So Texas is back up at number 1. Something to note, Iowa State, after that win over Texas, they've played some darn good volleyball. They're in the top 25, and they deserve to be in that top 25. Unfortunately for USC, they kind of dropped out, but, you lost twice at the Colorado, or at the Rocky Mountain schools. It's all about getting up off the mat now, because you can't lose to the Arizona schools. You just can't, unless you're just that banged up. But overall, notice also the 2 AAC schools, the American Athletic Conference schools, Houston and UCF. Darn good teams right there. And we're seeing some non-Power 5 conference teams. We have UCF in Houston. We have Western Kentucky and Rice. We have Marquette. We have BYU. We have Creighton. And obviously we have San Diego. So I think if my math is correct, that is 8 schools that are non-Power 5 that are in the top 25 coaches poll. Good job, non-Power 5 schools. Good job. So that's going to basically do it for the AVCA Division I Coaches Poll. Before we head on out, we got to deal with the matches to watch for. So compiling this list, I hate to say this, and this is no knock on this list. There weren't any definitely noteworthy matchups. There weren't any top 5 matchups, or I'm sorry, not top 10 matchups. There was only one ranked-on-ranked matchup. So we'll start with the sneaky good matchup. So we'll start on Thursday. We have number 3 Wisconsin at Illinois. You're probably thinking, well, why is this a matchup, Taryn? It's sneaky good because, remember, the last time these two teams played, they had to go 5, and they actually went 5 at Wisconsin. Now they have to go up to Champaign, Illinois, and they got to move on from the Nebraska and Minnesota win, and they have to take on that somewhat underrated Illinois team. I think Illinois could give them a battle. I mean, look at what they did to Penn State last week. Sorry. And then also on Friday, I have to mention this matchup, Long Beach State at Hawaii. I understand y'all are going to say, oh, he's biased. He's Big West biased. No. Stop. Yeah, this one is crucial for Long Beach State. Barring they get past Fullerton, they could take a 9-game winning streak to Hawaii, and this could be for possible first place amenities, just because Long Beach State's only 2 games out of first place. And I understand Hawaii won the first matchup quite convincingly, but now Long Beach State has to get up off the pedestal, and they actually have to beat Fullerton, and they also have to beat Hawaii. Hawaii is going to be the great challenge since they're playing at Hawaii. Also, in terms of sneaky good matchups, we have number 6 Ohio State at Northwestern. Okay, this one's going to be a tricky matchup just because Northwestern beat Purdue. It's great. It's great that they beat Purdue. They have one top 10 win. Can they beat Ohio State? Ohio State knows how big of a match this is. They know the magnitude of if they somehow lose, they fall out of first place. Also on Friday, we have Michigan receiving votes at number 9, Minnesota. Look, Minnesota has a lot of ground to make up if they somehow want to remain first. But I think in terms of the Big Ten Conference, I think first place could be out of their grasp. I think at this point, it's all about staying in that top 10 or that top 16 in order to host a NCAA tournament game. I know I'm getting into bracketology right away, but I'm trying not to. Also on Friday, we have number 10, Georgia Tech at Miami. Sneaky good matchup just because Miami, remember how I said Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Pitt are basically a big drop-off or big upstart after third place? Well, that Miami and Florida State are basically lumped together in 4th place. As Miami is trying to make the NCAA tournament for a second straight year, to do so, they're going to have to at least compete with some of these big-time teams. Georgia Tech is a good test for them, and that's basically where it's going to stand. And then also on Saturday, I have to throw in another Big West Conference matchup right here. Santa Barbara at Cal Poly. Now, my thing for Cal Poly is this. They're a very good home team. I want to say they have yet to lose at home. And here's the thing about Santa Barbara. They have not struggled. They have not done well when it comes to facing the top tier teams in the Big West Conference. You saw what happened against Hawaii. It kind of blew up. You saw what happened against Long Beach State. They started strong and then fell apart the rest of the way. For Santa Barbara to have any hope of making the NCAA tournament and possibly winning the Big West, they have to, I repeat, have to win on the road. I know it's tough winning on the road. I know Cal Poly is going to be a good team. I know your blue and green rivalry is a big-time rivalry, but you have to pull off a big win on the road. You were able to do so against UC Irvine, but now you got to do so against Cal Poly. That you got to be one. If you want to be one of the best, you got to beat one of the best. Santa Barbara is clinging to a one-game lead entering this week over Long Beach State and Cal Poly. A loss could probably hurt their chances, and it could open the door to a possible second bid from the Big West Conference coming from Long Beach State, Cal Poly, or Santa Barbara. I think Long Beach State has the second best RPI behind Hawaii. I'm not entirely sure. That's going to be for another day. I digress. Also on Saturday, we have Kansas at number 11, Baylor. Remember when Kansas was nearly beat Texas? It hasn't been great sledding for them as of late. They're 5-5 in conference, and they're not really near the top of the Big 12 conference chain. Don't tell that to the Jayhawks, though, because they're going to compete all night, and they're trying to compete for that bid into the NCAA tournament. I think Big 12 championship is out of the question. I think for Kansas, it's now all about can they make the NCAA tournament as an at-large in a Power 5 conference. Jumping over to Sunday, we have number 4 Nebraska at Northwestern. The same thing for Northwestern's got the toughest gauntlet this week. They have Ohio State on Friday and Nebraska on Sunday. The good thing is they're at home. The bad thing is they're facing the top one of the three-headed monster in the Big Ten. I understand Northwestern has had a great season, but I don't know if they can win. If they can win a set from either Ohio State or Nebraska, I think that would be an accomplishment on its own. But for me, it's just tough to pick Northwestern in this situation. Staying in Illinois, we have number 9 Minnesota at Illinois. For Illinois, it's another big-time matchup. They have a pair of 2 top 10 matchups at home this week, as they get the number 9 Gophers, who, again, their goal is to try to host an NCAA tournament, or to host the NCAA tournament region. That is their big-time goal. I guess another big-time goal would be to maybe crack top 8 to basically have home court up until the Elite 8. Then it gets interesting from there on out. Or, I'm sorry, up until the Sweet 16. Then when it comes to the Elite 8, then they'd have to go on the road to take on Texas or Nebraska or whoever they face in the Elite 8, if they get there. Also on Sunday, we have number 10 Georgia Tech at Florida State. Again, Florida State's in the same boat as Miami is. They need some big-time wins. They need to show the selection committee that they deserve to make the NCAA tournament just as much as the other teams in the ACC. I feel they have a good shot, but I was so high on Florida earlier in the season, but now they're kind of falling apart. They're losing to Virginia, of all teams. Nothing against Virginia, but how are you losing to that? Like, come on, Florida State. You gotta pick yourself up off the mat, and you gotta kick some booty. Otherwise, it's gonna hurt your tournament chances. Staying in the Big Ten, we also have number 14 Purdue at Michigan. Interesting matchup right here. I think this is winnable for Michigan just because they've got senior leadership. Well, not like leadership, but they've got they have a lot of veterans on their team, a lot of experience on their team. They're facing a young Purdue team that obviously came off the loss to Northwestern, that obviously barely beat, well, I wouldn't say barely beat, but they had a close call against Indiana, and now Purdue's trying to pick up the pieces and try to get themselves back on track to possibly continuing their winning ways to possibly hosting an NCAA tournament region. Jumping over to the Pac-12 in terms of sneaky good matchups, we have Washington State at number 16, Oregon. So the first matchup, Washington State won that one in 5. Here's my thing for Washington State. If they win this matchup, I think they're a lock for the tournament. They've done so well against non-ranked teams, but if they beat Oregon again, this time it's going to be at Oregon, mind you, Washington State gets into that tournament. I don't see a reason why you don't put them in the NCAA tournament, especially since they've beaten Oregon twice. I'm about to talk about Oregon in a little bit momentarily after this, but Washington State, obviously the whole Burdette Greene situation of how he's fighting cancer, my heart goes out to him and the Greene family. I hope Washington State, for purposes of their fighting for their associate head coach, they do find a way to win. I hope they make the NCAA tournament. I think this is a Washington State team that everyone wants to get behind and cheer for. That's it for the sneaky good matchups. So we only have 2 notable matchups, and like I said, we don't have definitely noteworthy matchups. So first notable matchup we have is number 20 Kentucky at Georgia. This is going to be on a Wednesday. You're probably wondering, well, why is that a notable matchup? Number 20 team in the nation taking on Georgia. Georgia is actually near the top of the SEC standings. Remember what happened when I said if Auburn doesn't win against Florida and Kentucky, they're a long shot to make the NCAA tournament? Well, they didn't win against Florida or Kentucky. As for Georgia, they're actually sitting a half game behind Kentucky for second place in the SEC, and it's the only meeting between these two teams. If Georgia wants to have any shot of making the NCAA tournament or possibly winning the SEC, they're going to have to beat Kentucky. My thing for Georgia is this. They actually, on paper, they have a decent shot at making the NCAA tournament, and they have themselves a decent shot at winning the SEC. If they beat Kentucky, they also have Arkansas, by the way. If Georgia beats Kentucky and they also beat Arkansas, this could be very interesting for Georgia going forward, just because the rest of their schedule is Tennessee, which has been struggling this season, Ole Miss, which has kind of been heads or tails, and LSU, which has been which started out strong in the SEC, and then they kind of cooled off. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what Georgia has in store for Kentucky. I think Kentucky wins that one, but don't sleep on the Bulldogs. They are a very quiet 8-3 in that conference. And remember, they did beat Florida, that was huge right there. And here's my thing for Georgia. They don't play Florida again. Their only meeting against Florida was that one meeting on October 19th. So if they beat Kentucky, does the committee say they beat the 2 best teams in the SEC? Let's put them in. Because you also got to remember that Georgia has 2 losses to Auburn, which belly flopped to Florida and Kentucky. And they also have a loss to Mississippi State. Georgia is possibly 2 losses from Auburn away from leading this conference and shocking the entire world. But that Auburn team was hot at the time, even though they were playing not so good competition. So closing out the matchups to watch for is number 19 Washington at number 16 Oregon. That's going to be on Friday. Remember, Oregon actually won this. I want to say Oregon won. Yeah, not Oregon. Washington won the first meeting in 5 sets the first go around. For Oregon to have any sort of chance to possibly host an NCAA tournament match or an NCAA tournament region, and for them to stay in the Pac-12 title hunt, they got to beat Washington. Washington is right behind Oregon in terms of the Pac-12. They're also lumped up with Washington State and USC. USC has the Arizona schools, by the way, and then Washington State has Oregon State and Oregon, and then, like I said, Oregon's got the Washington schools this week. So it's a big week for Washington and Oregon, as well as Washington State, as those 3 are going to be basically beating up on one another, except Washington's not going to play Washington State. But overall, it's going to be interesting to say the least for Oregon. If Oregon does not prove themselves this week, they do not deserve a top 16 spot. I do not care how talented that team is. That team has been suspect ever since they beat Long Beach State. I don't want to hear the excuses. And to close out the the whole show, on Sunday, the NCAA Division I Tournament Committee had a little bit of a whatchamacallit. They had the release of their current top 10. So their current top 10 consists of Oregon at 10, Minnesota at 9, Stanford at 8, Wisconsin at 7, Ohio State at 6, San Diego at 5, Pitt at 4, Nebraska at 3, Louisville at 2, and Texas at 1. So I actually got a comment on this. I said, what do you all think of this top 10 committee, and is your team in the top 10? So one person did comment, and he said, Oregon over Florida at 10 makes no sense. I partially agree to that, just because Oregon has some iffy losses to like USC and then Washington State, and they had a few close calls here and there. Pitt gets some respect, which obviously they're number 4. Wisconsin gets no respect after recent play. I totally agree on that, just because Wisconsin, I think, should be in the top 5. I don't know who they should replace. I think switch Wisconsin with San Diego, because while San Diego does have one loss in this season to Louisville, they haven't really played the stiffest competition in the West Coast Conference. And they even had to go 5 with LMU. And he also says that they copy and pasted the last rankings and switched a few things. It isn't very exciting seeing something rule over others. And he says RPI looks heavily involved. And that's kind of what I think this whole thing is based off of, just because RPI is huge. Obviously, you got to reward some teams that play stiff competition, but you don't want to leave out the teams that are fighting for their playoff lives and are in Power 5 conferences. But overall, it's basically a numbers game, and I'll have to compare the previous top 10 from the Division I committee to the current one. So that was quite interesting, to say the least. But that is going to do it for the matchups to watch for and for the Division I top 10 committee as of late. And ladies and gentlemen, this is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. By the way, that top 10 committee power ranking was of October 29th, 2022. So that was during the that was when Wisconsin beat Minnesota, and it was definitely after Wisconsin beat Nebraska. But on that note, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It's time to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I definitely appreciate you. I'm sorry if this show continues to be longer than expected. It nearly went 2 hours. I promise you all, next week should be probably at least 1 hour 30 minutes. That's my goal. 1 hour 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour 35. I promise you all, I will surpass 100 minutes. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Terran Rodriguez signing off. One thing to note, Set Point will not be on next Monday. I will be on a cruise this past weekend, and I plan to move Set Points either next Tuesday or next Wednesday. But until then, you all have yourself a great rest of the week. Stay safe. Happy Halloween in advance. I will see you next week for Set Point, as I don't plan to do SoCal Supreme Sports Show due to my cruise. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the evening. Have a happy Halloween. Enjoy the volleyball action. I'll see you next week. Peace!